Hi there, thanks for joining me again. I'm currently working on another gift quilt, this time for a teenager. I wanted to use the quilt as you go method because it's by far my preferred method. I decided that I wanted to use sashing in this one to make things easier, but figured I could incorporate the use of the sashing into the design to add a little colour to the back of the quilt at the same time. I'll add a list of the required fabrics and their cut sizes either in the description or on our blog, as there are some limitations to the amount of information I can add to the YouTube description. So here we go. This quilt is made up of 6 sections. Sections 1, 3, 4 and 5 are identical. Section 6 is the same but it's slightly narrower. So I'll go through the making of the section 1 first. We're going to mark up the quilting lines first this time. We need to mark on the right side of the fabric using a heat erasable pen. We're using vertical lines 2 inches apart. So find the centre of the fabric on one of the shorter sides and measure in 5 1/4 inches. Mark with an heat erasable pen and repeat this a few times down the fabric. Then join up those marks. Move your ruler out 2 inches and repeat. I'm only quilting 5 lines in this. Continue this until you've marked lines down the entire length of the fabric. Take your backing fabric and lay it out. If it's wrinkled, give it a run over with the iron. It needs to be right side down, so pretty side faces the table. Lay your wadding on top of this. Then add the top fabric right side facing up so you can see your quilting lines. I'm using the texture blenders again, which aren't really directional, but if you're using directional fabric, be sure it's oriented correctly. Pin all those layers together. As with the last quilt, I'm straight line quilting again. I've absolutely nothing against free motion quilting. I just think the straight lines in the design call for straight line quilting in this case. If you place your pins between the marked lines, you'll not have to remove them as you're quilting. Now sew down the marked lines, starting with the centre one. I use a size 90 needle or 14 depending on where in the world you are, a natural thread and a stitch length of 3mm. You can now remove all those pins and trim this section down to remove any excess backing or wadding. If you do quilt this any more than 2 inches apart, the fabrics will pull in a little more, so just bear this in mind. It's completely fine, but your finished quilt may be a little smaller. So I don't bore you with the same details, I'm going to go off and create sections 3, 4, 5 and the slightly narrower section 6 off camera. Blimey, that took a while, but I have all but one section complete. Now for the colourful section. This is made up of strips measured to different lengths, but all measure 3 inches in height. Again, I'll add a list of the combinations that need to be sewn together, but I'll complete a few to show you the process. For this section of the quilt, all the coloured sections will sit to the left. So again, if you're using directional fabric, be sure to orient it correctly. Take 2 pieces and place them right sides together. You can go ahead and pin them if you need to. Sew using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Backstitch at the beginning and end. I know I always say that, but it's a good way of securing those stitches and it's a good habit to get into. Press to set the seam, then press that seam towards the darkest fabric. In this case, all the seams will be pressed to the coloured side. Repeat for the next row. And again, there are a total of 32 of these strips in different combinations of sizes. So again, not to bore you, I'll go off and sew these together. So they're all sewn together. Now I need to press them. They'll all be going to the dark side of the fabric. Press to set the seam, then press open the 2 fabrics and press the seam to the darker side. Now that the sections are ready, we can start construction of the panel. First, fold your fabric in half with the wrong sides together to find the centre. Mark that in some way. Now, as you can see, I only marked one side of this, which meant I wasn't able to easily see that the sections were being placed correctly. Looking back, I would have marked both sides, or both edges, so I could add the first coloured section properly. It worked out okay, but the coloured section of my finished quilt is a little wonky, so mark both edges. Place your backing fabric right side down. Add wadding like we did with the previous sections. Take row 16 and place it right side up in the centre. and add row 17 on top of that, right sides together. Pin them in place. Sew down the edge at 1/4 inch. Fold open, smooth out, and then add row 18 in the same way. You can always press this, but be careful if you're using a poly blend wadding that you don't apply too much heat to it. Continue this until you get to the bottom of the column, then go back to the centre and work your way upwards. Press the entire thing from the top. I love how this section has come together, and it really doesn't require any extra quilting, so that's that sorted. That's all the prep done. Now we need to sew all these sections together. To do this, we're using sashing, and as I mentioned at the beginning, I wanted the sashing to be part of the design, so I'm using texture blenders again, the same ones we've been using throughout the quilt. I mean, the coloured panel is all texture blenders. So I have 2 1-inch strips of each colour that have been cut to the width of the fabric, and 2 2-inch strips also cut to the width of the fabric. This is a long quilt, and the standard fabric tends to be around 44 inches wide, hence the need for 2. Place them right sides together in the orientation you can see here, and sew from the top left corner down to the bottom right corner. Trim off the excess and press the seam open. Repeat this for the other strips. Now fold all of the 2-inch strips in half and iron them with the wrong sides facing one another. The 1-inch strips needs to be pinned to or clipped to the back of the quilt with the right side facing the quilt, and the front 2-inch strip which you folded in half and ironed, need to be pinned or clipped to the front of the quilt. The raw edge should be against the raw edge of the quilt. The fold you created should sit to the left at this point. It's completely up to you if you want to pin them up separately, but I find it easier to carefully line them both up, clip them in place, and start sewing. So with it all clipped together, we now need to sew down that edge using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. This will start coming together really quickly now. You'll be looking for other ways to use this method. It's really satisfying. Flip over the first column and open up the back sashing. Take the second column, which is the wonderfully colourful one, and place it facing you. Carefully pin or clip the left edge to that back sashing. Sew down this edge, again using 1/4 inch seam allowance. Open that up. Fold over the front sashing and stitch close to the edge all the way down. That's 2 sections together. Now we need to add the others, which will all use exactly the same method but different coloured fabric strips. Here's the finished quilt, ready to be washed and boxed up for Christmas. Thanks for watching, and a huge thanks to all my new subscribers. If you haven't already, please consider liking this video and hitting the subscribe button. And remember, we have the giveaway currently running. I'll pop a link to that in the description below. Bye!